No, poďme na ďalšiu tému. Keď sa povie elektromobil, tak z tohto pohľadu asi nie každý hneď skáče nadšením. Možno vyššie obstarávacie náklady, možno nižší dojazd, alebo k tomu všetkému ešte malá infraštruktúra na nabíjanie. Áno, na tom všetkom sa pracuje a ľudia z tohto priemyslu priznávajú, že ešte ten cieľ je vzdialený, aj keď už elektromobily fungujú s nami veľa rokov a veľa sa toho zmenilo. Zlepšili sa tie veci, ktoré som hovoril. Ale ak sa pozrieme na mestá, tak práve v mestách si myslím, že to zmysel dáva. Nie sú tam tie vzdialenosti až také veľké, no a pracuje sa na mnohých technológiách, ktoré posúvajú nabíjanie elektromobilov v rámci miest úplne niekde inde. Máme dnes k dispozícii technológie nabíjania z pouličného osvetlenia, z lámp. Máme dnes technológie, kde pri parkovaní, samozrejme sú to zatiaľ len nejaké skúšobné technológie, ale pri parkovaní sa auto samé bezdrôtovo nabíja priamo z parkovacieho miesta. No a úplne takými inovatívnymi technológiami je to skôr taký ten management systém tej energie, tak z týchto technológií je asi najznámejšie to, že autá si budú medzi sebou tú energiu vymieňať. To znamená, že prídete doma, si nabijete auto z fotovoltiky, ktoré máte na streche a vy tú batériu nepotrebujete úplne plnú. Ale kolega ide niekde na služobnú cestu, má auto vedľa vás na parkovisku, tak vy viete firme tú svoju energiu odpredať, ktorú ste si doma získali zadarmo a pomôže kolegovi. Čiže car to car, výmena energie už tiež je na pretrase a robí sa s tým. No ale náš ďalší host, alebo hostka, by som povedal úplne presne, má taký nadhľad na elektromobilitu a práve elektromobilitu v mestách. A ja som veľmi rád, že sa pozrieme aj na takú jej víziu z jej pohľadu a ona to má v srdci, ona sa ani nemôže ničomu inému venovať, pretože to má aj nakoniec vo svojom mene. Takže, dámy a páni, pozývam pani Jennifer Green, riaditeľku pre udržateľnosť v meste Burlington v štáte Vermont a odborníčku na nulovú spotrebu energie. Nech sa páči.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate being able to tell you about our humble city in the northern part of the United States and our full-on efforts to electrify transportation. So my plan today is to outline sort of where we are in the United States, where we are in our move towards net zero energy, and then in particular, the role that electric mobility has to play. Of course, we all know that Americans love their cars, so that's going to be sort of first and foremost. But beyond the transition from internal combustion engine vehicles to private electric, I want to talk about multimodal transportation as well. And I really want to emphasize this role that equity plays. So that's the plan over the next couple of minutes together. So bear with me. I always feel like it's helpful to ground myself and physically where I am, so I hope you'll bear with me while I do the same. So I work for the Burlington Electric Department. It's one of 16 city departments in the city of Burlington. I don't know how many people have been to the northeast of the United States, but Vermont is the most rural state in the country, and Burlington, with its grand population of 44,000 people, is the largest city in the state of Vermont. Montreal is the largest big city close to us. We're so just south of the Canadian border and just north of Boston. So it's important for you to understand that Vermont is also a renewable energy state. So our legislature gives the distribution utilities, of which Burlington Electric is one, a cadre of cash to spend on our transition away from fossil fuels. So we have a bucket of money to spend, and if we don't spend it well and efficiently on strategic electrification, that money goes back to the state. So we're really committed to moving towards electric mobility as quickly and as efficiently as we can. So that's Burlington, that's Vermont, and that's the Burlington Electric Department. We're on the shores of Lake Champlain. We're across from the state of New York, so honestly, we have much better views in Vermont looking over at the Adirondacks in New York than they have looking back at us. And we're merely 14 square miles, but in that small jurisdiction, we have a university and a major hospital. So fortunately, sort of a lot of creativity, energy, and some solid employers, which of course is very helpful. But Burlington is known really for a couple of key things. We think of ourselves as being particularly innovative and for growing small business. So I know Ben & Jerry's is in Europe, in Slovakia as well. I think Burton Snowboards has made its way to Europe as well. Jake Carpenter, who started Burton, grew his business in Burlington. And of course, last but not least, our sort of claim to fame is this former presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders, who's also from Burlington. So again, lots of entrepreneurial spirit and energy. And as I said, the home to the Burlington Electric Department, which in 2014 became the first electric department, i.e. the first city in the country of America to source 100% of its electricity from renewables. So we depend on our wind farms around the state. We depend on hydro, some of it, of course, which comes from Canada, being so close to the border. We depend on solar. This is our rooftop solar on top of the airport. And we depend on our biomass plant. So as I was mentioning in the last presentation, biomass is interesting in this context and I think quite different from what we experience in Europe. So this is the center, essentially the center of the city. Not too far from the university, not too far from the hospital. The wood chips that come and feed the biomass plant are actually a byproduct of Vermont's forest industry. So Vermont's very rural, the most rural state in the country, heavily forested, and many private landowners who, in an effort to sort of maintain their property, do active forest management. So the best wood is used for high-end use, say furniture, construction, but the waste from those products will come in by train. The electric department will buy that wood waste, and this goes into our biomass plant. So solar, wind, hydro, biomass. So this is the foundation of our renewable energy portfolio. And again, this all came to be in 2014. So the stage is set. We have a clean electric grid. Now we've decided to go the next route. In 2019, we passed an ordinance, a bill, which says that we are now going to move away from fossil fuels in the built environment, and for the case of this presentation, in the ground transportation sector. So we are all in making our net zero energy by 2030 a reality. And again, we're going to focus today on the electric vehicle portion. So if I were to show you the roadmap, we'd see on page 3 this lovely table which outlines where we're going. I think if you could take this square and turn it into a pie, you would see the biggest chunk of effort, 60% of our effort, needs to go into making our buildings efficient, tightening them up, and then electrifying them with heat pumps and geothermal. The second biggest piece of the pie, though, is in the transportation sector. So our goal is to take every internal combustion engine, essentially 80% of them, and electrify them. Lastly, we do have district heating that we need to implement. And then last but not least, we're focusing on alternative transportation, which gets into sort of multimodal transit, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I can't see you particularly well, but if you have questions, please feel free to interrupt at any time. So in our move towards electrification, we knew that we needed to begin with some well-situated and equally distributed charging sites throughout the city. So again, the length of Burlington, we wanted to make sure everyone had access to charging. So we've got publicly available charging in our city areas, but then we're also incentivizing private businesses, private companies, to offer electric charging, and we'll give you a discount on that. We'll help make that possible for you if you open it up to the public. So this concern about charging deserts and the availability to charge, we're slowly but surely alleviating that by strategically adding charging stations throughout the city. And then in order to complement those chargers, we're really working now with workplace settings to offer you rebates to further up the degree to which workplace charging is available. So again, between $2,500 and $15,000, we'll offer a business for charging. And I just want to mention here, I don't know if this is a new term for folks, but under President Biden, he has made it a requirement that if you are offering federal dollars, state dollars, and local dollars, you need to be thinking about your Justice 40 areas in the city. These are generally low-income areas. This is especially important for Burlington because we are a refugee resettlement community with 40-some-odd languages spoken in our public schools and people really coming from all over the world who need transportation infrastructure as well. So we've got our strategic sites, we've got rebates that we're offering you to put in chargers, and then last but not least, we'll offer you $900 for a home charger. So my home charger was essentially paid for by my electric utility. That said, we want to make sure that we're also maximizing our grid by offering off-peak charging in the evenings. So as you know, there's the same flow of electricity that runs throughout those wires regardless of day or night. We also know that there's an overabundance of electricity in the evening times when people are asleep and businesses are shut down. So we'll offer you a cheaper rate to charge at night. So I go home, I plug my car in at 10 o'clock. On the app, I can see that that energy is flowing into my vehicle. So I do drive, or my family members drive, about 16,000 kilometers a year, and we figure we're saving about 180, 200 euros a year by charging in those off-peak hours. So this is really incentivizing a lot of homeowners to go electric. Now, I mentioned that Burlington is a refugee resettlement community. So we have a lot of folks that are new to America, newly entering the workforce. Buying an electric vehicle, buying any kind of vehicle for that matter, may seem like a stretch. So we are really committed to ensuring that regardless of your income, regardless of the language you speak at home, or whether you're a homeowner, that you can participate in what we think of as the electric revolution. So we have a fairly robust car share company, and we're slowly working to electrify that fleet. Again, not because we want people to test before they drive. That's kind of the last thing we want. We just want people who don't particularly want to own a vehicle or where vehicle ownership is out of reach to be able to participate in driving electric. Actually, one of the things that we're doing this week, which my colleague is taking on back at home, is an electric driving showcase for women, particularly from Africa, who have come to Burlington. They're brand new drivers. They're driving most of their family members. They're schlepping kids around. We want them to be able to participate. So we're offering them an opportunity to test drive some vehicles. And then we have a rebate if you're buying a used vehicle or a secondhand vehicle. So this is important, our car share relationship, to help ensure that everyone, again, can engage in electric driving. We have a large rental population in Burlington. About 60% of the people who live in Burlington rent their homes. So while the home charger is very convenient and fine for me, I have the privilege of owning a home and having a driveway. For people that are renting who do not have off-street parking, we needed to make sure that if you depend on the street for your parking, that you could also charge. So we've got charging stations located up on utility poles with your app, you hit the button, the cord comes down, and you can charge. These are level 2 chargers. So again, just trying to think about mobility and particularly electric car ownership in an equitable way. We want to ensure that everyone can participate. I briefly mentioned rebates. So we've got electric rebates that we're offering, again, to help encourage people in addition to the adoption of those charging stations. If you're buying a used vehicle, we'll give you $1,300. If you're low or moderate income, we'll add another $200 to that. And if you're a super user, so this is someone who is driving more than 17,000 miles a year. These are the Uber drivers, the Lyft drivers, the pizza delivery people. We'll give you $2,300 plus the $500 in order to encourage you to buy electric. So we really want to focus on folks that drive most, where we can get the biggest carbon benefit attached. And I did start by saying Americans love their cars, of course, but it's not just about converting people from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric. It's really about ensuring that we can modernize our fleet and electrify our full bus fleet. And it's about taking advantage of the bike revolution. As bike infrastructure slowly grows and increases in the United States, we're seeing more and more people opt to bike. And I think the electric bike thing it's big and it's exciting. And I think it's especially exciting from a gender perspective. We're finding more and more women now are riding bikes, at least in my area of the world, thanks in part to the combination of safer biking, but also e-biking. I have to say, I was quite a snob about switching from my personal bike to an e-bike. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then someone suggested I just give it a try, and there was no turning back. So my office is up here, my house is down here, and the ease in which I can go back and forth. Of course, it's not just about moving from conventional bike to electric, but really getting people out of their cars. So we are seeing a nice adoption there. So now that I've sort of set the stage on where we are beginning to contemplate sort of where we're going into 2030 and beyond. So unless there are any questions, I'll sort of conclude with our future plans. So looking at the adoption of EVs, again, in part because of the plethora of stations that are coming online, and because of the rebates which are encouraging people to drive electric, we're seeing a trajectory and a need to install more stations around town. So in preparation for the release of the Inflation Reduction Act funding, which is coming through the Biden administration, we knew that we needed to strategize about how we're going to grow our infrastructure. So, looking at how our current EVs are being used in Burlington and preparing for a 25% uptick in that, and thinking about the degree to which we want to have each charger utilized. We want each charger to be used about 50% of the time to really maximize efficiency. And knowing that we were going to need a combination of both level 2 and then, of course, level 3, which are the fast chargers at 20 minutes, we came up with the plan on where our next tranche of chargers are going to be. And we decided as a collective, I don't know if you know this expression of if you want to find a submarine lost in the Pacific Ocean, you don't go to the submarine officer. You get the engineer, the weather person, the sociologist. You pull a wide array of skills and expertise together, and you come up with sort of the best solution. We had a working group that comprised people from all different sectors and decided at the end of the day that there were 3 things that we really need to keep in mind as we considered where each of our additional chargers were going to go. They were going to be accessible to the public, so no more private chargers unless you were going to pay full freight. We were going to avoid natural areas because we do want to honor our beautiful lake and the parks that we have in our city. And then we needed to make sure that there was lighting so that women in particular could feel safe charging. And based on that, we decided on where our commercial locations were going to go. And then we decided where our residential and community locations were going to be placed. In essence, we created our map, which looked at housing density and where most people are living, particularly renters again. We wanted to make sure that we put stations in multimodal centers, so they were going to be near car stations and on the bike lanes and near the bus station, for example. We knew that we wanted to prioritize, again, these Justice 40 neighborhoods where our new Americans are living. And then we wanted to hear what people had to say. We knew that we weren't going to bring the public along unless we invited everyone to participate in deciding where these chargers were going to go. So we're in the process now of a citywide survey asking people where they want chargers to be located. So I'm pleased to let you know that as of a couple weeks ago, we learned about an award through the Biden administration, was $5 million, which will allow us to put in 200 new charging ports around the city and actually make sort of our map, based on those different criteria we set, a reality. And we're going to combine that money with a net zero energy revenue bond. So we'll be going to bond. Well, 20% of the money for these 200 new stations will come from this revenue bond and 80% from the federal government. So I hope that helped paint a picture of sort of where we are in Burlington, planting the stage from being 100% renewable electricity to net zero energy, and in the context of net zero energy, the important role that electric mobility plays, including buses, bikes, charging, and charging infrastructure. Thanks so much.
Ďakujem pekne. Nejaké otázky prišli nám do slajdov?
See what happens.
Yeah, you're searching if any question is inside slide. No.
Big Slido fan.
Maybe,
No.
May
I'm
I
off the hook. Oh.
It's any research about the cleanness of the air before and now? Is there any numbers?
Yes, thank you for asking that. This did come up, and people often ask about the cost of driving electric, and we think about both the operation and maintenance costs.
Because we do it for CO2.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
So it is important to think when we're driving electric that not only are we getting the CO2 reductions, but of course air quality improvement, noise, and these other positive externalities. So Burlington does have a high asthma rate, as do many cities in their most densest sections. So this is why the electric bus is especially important, because it serves people of lower income in particular, and so important. We don't have enough data to say anything definitively. We have, there's national data which certainly points to the fact that driving electric improves air quality, particularly as demonstrated in asthma rates.
Okay, thank you. Here's one. How would one go about starting to create an EV strategy
in the city? Yeah. I think first and foremost, in the case of Burlington, it was having a leader at the helm in government who really wanted to engage with the population. But it can go both ways. I think you can have a progressive population that's really pushing the government towards taking action. So I think it can go both ways. But ultimately, our strategy is the result of community groups coming together, deciding that this was really important to them, and then working with the experts in the electric department to see what was physically and infrastructurally possible.
You know exactly how many years or months it takes to prepare this project?
To come up with a strategy, it depends on your government system and your community. We wrote our net zero energy strategy in about 18 months, and then our specific vehicle strategy over 6, maybe. Okay.
Next question. Can you describe how did the citizens feel about this strategy? Did you educate citizens? Some public campaigns.
Yeah, public campaigns. Yeah, very, very important. So the survey that we're launching is really an opportunity to do two things. It's sincerely to hear where people want charging infrastructure to be placed, but we also see it as a vehicle to bring people on board and to express our interest in making electric mobility happen. So the survey, yes, I think campaigns are absolutely imperative. And it is important to meet people where they are. So the perception, of course, is that electric vehicles are expensive. But if we can explain to people that when you add up the federal, the state, the local incentives, and you stack that up to the price of a new internal combustion engine vehicle, it's actually now at cost parity. And when you think about the financing that you save in the operation and maintenance of that vehicle, it starts to make sense for people. Now, someone might argue, well, that's good for you because you own your home, you can charge at home. So we're now developing a tariff. You saw those pole-mounted chargers. So we want to make it as inexpensive for renters to charge in off hours as we do for a homeowner.
Yeah, is there any possibility and opportunity to have lower taxes for
for lower taxes? I should know more about this. There are federal tax credits if you're buying an electric vehicle in the United States, yes. Yeah, it's $7,500 now, so it's not insignificant.
Okay, what does success look like? What have you achieved so far?
Yeah, success is reaching our net zero energy by 2030 goal, which essentially means that of the vehicles currently being driven, those internal combustion engine vehicles, 80% are electric. It also means fully electrifying the car share fleet, and it means that all the buses that run in town, many of which are diesel, honestly, are fully electric. So I would say it's sort of those three key things primarily, but maybe equally just as important is this thinking about the infrastructure, i.e. Making biking and walking easier in Burlington, to be honest, so that there's an equal opportunity for people to walk and bike instead of having to opt for a car.
And one question with the future, recycling batteries.
Yes.
Do you have any plan?
Yeah, so this will become an issue because now the earliest electric vehicles are 10 years old. You know, we're imagining 10 years more. And what I can say is our waste district, which addresses waste in the region, is working with the federal government, as are other waste districts around America, to figure out like the next phase of electric batteries. So how are they going to be recycled? Yeah, it's certainly a concern.
Yeah, the terrible question with blackout. Isn't it too much of risk to be fully electric?
Yeah.
What is the backup plan?
Yeah, is it too much risk to be fully electric, and what's the backup plan? I would say Burlington is fortunate. Again, you saw how small we are, innovative, sort of ready to take risks. Coupled with that is a fairly small electric grid. We are not talking about a lot of outages. And when we do have outages, they're usually caused, honestly, by squirrels, animals in the wires. When we do have storms, we can sort of fix our grid up quickly and be back online. I think the bigger challenge for full-on electrification is not only the issue with outages, which is going to need to be coupled with batteries and the drop in battery price so that we can store up energy for those inopportune times when you go offline. So battery storage is going to be important. And I lost my train of thought, but I'm going with batteries for now for an answer.
And do you like hydrogen? Why just electric cars?
Yes.
What about hydrogen cars?
Yes, we've talked a little bit about hydrogen buses here, and all I can say is it's coming. I would argue that we're behind you in that development.
Okay, and I think this one, there are probably parking places where as well ICE cars can be parked. Don't they block charging spaces?
Yeah, that's interesting. So The question is about internal combustion engine vehicles, ICE vehicles, taking up the parking spaces where we want charging to be. So this is the importance of fast chargers, arguably. You come in and in 20 minutes, you're done. This has taken a lot of collaboration with our Department of Public Works that oversees parking in the city. So undoubtedly, making our net zero energy roadmap come to fruition will require collaboration with a lot of city departments, DPW in particular, because of how they manage the roads. Yeah, it's always a problem, and we're working with our parking enforcement. How are we going to move cars out? How are we going to communicate effectively to the public that this is designated as an electric car space?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was our last question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.